What's up, everybody? Welcome to Phoenix Squadron. My name is Mike, and today we're going to talk about one of the most hotly contested and debated subjects since the prequel trilogy. That is, what does bring balance to the Force actually mean? What does the prophecy mean with Anakin Skywalker? What brought this on was I was watching a video by a channel called WDW Pro, and there's a gentleman on here by the name of Coach who starts talking about balance. And it's when I started listening to it, it just reminded me of one of the most common misconceptions of what balance of the Force actually means, what George Lucas meant by it. And I've heard all kinds of different explanations for it. Whether it was, equal balance of the number of Jedi and Sith, whether it was what, like this gentleman says, we're going to watch here in a second. So actually, let's go ahead and watch what he says, and I'm going to break it down for you guys.
She doesn't know a thing about it. And when you're talking about the balance of the Force, George Lucas is on record multiple times saying that the balance of the Force is the deletion of the dark side, where there is only the light. People keep bringing in their own, balance in the Star Wars galaxy doesn't mean the same as balance in.
All right, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is one of the most common explanations and misconceptions. I watched the rest of the video, and he seems like a pretty passionate Star Wars fan, which he's got a thumbs up in my book for, but he does get this wrong. And a lot of people do. It's a nuanced thing here, but it actually is pretty important. So what it actually means to bring balance to the Force, what the prophecy means with Anakin Skywalker, is not the deletion of the dark side. The dark side and the light side of the Force are just aspects of the Force. That's all it is. There is no changing that. There's a dark and a light. With everything in life, there's a dark and a light. What George actually means by this is, to use Coach's words, the deletion of the Sith. So the Sith are the ones that corrupt the Force. They use the dark side to corrupt, to bend it to their will, to bring imbalance to the Force. The Jedi and the Sith, it doesn't matter how many there are of each one or anything like that. You cannot delete an aspect of the Force. You cannot delete the dark side. You cannot delete the light side. But the Sith are the ones that corrupt the Force. They corrupt the dark side. They use the dark side for personal gain, to manipulate themselves. They bend it to their will. The Jedi, they serve the will of the Force, or they're supposed to anyway. We're going to get into that in a second. We got to understand the difference between the light and the dark, the Jedi and the Sith. They're four separate things here. The Jedi serve the light side of the Force. They serve the will of the Force. They use the light side of the Force to help in that end. The Sith, they corrupt, they bend the dark side to their will. You can't delete the dark side of the Force. That's not how the Force works. So a complete removal or deletion of the Sith is how you bring balance to the Force. There can be 10,000 Jedi. They're serving the will of the Force. There is no imbalance, but one Sith will bring the Force out of balance. That's what they're talking about. That's what George Lucas means. That's why Anakin is the chosen one in order to bring balance to the Force, which he did at the end of Return of the Jedi. Luke comes in, he turns his father to the light side of the Force, they destroy Palpatine. There's no more Sith now. That is bringing balance to the Force. Not deleting the dark side is always there. Now, one of the arguments I've heard is the Jedi, which is back in the Dawn of the Jedi. The Jedi would study both sides of the Force. They lived on Tython, and what they did was they had two different moons. They had a light side moon they called Ashla. They had a dark side moon called Bogan. And when one of the Jedi would fall maybe too far to one side, if they fell too far to the light side, they would be sent to the dark moon, which would Bogan, and in order to meditate and contemplate there and try and bring themselves back into balance. That's what they felt balance was. And the opposite, if you fell too much to the dark side, they would send you to the light side moon, Ashla. And there's a big argument there that that is actually the true balance. I don't think that that concept is right, according to George Lucas. That is not true balance, is studying both sides, because you can't. Even the Jedi would eventually fall to one side or the other. There was no true balance, or not for any amount of time. They always fell to one side or the other, because that's what's natural. Fence sitting and kind of trying to play both sides is never natural. There's no such thing as a gray Jedi or anything like that. It was always your light side, you're serving the will of the Force. The dark side, you're corrupting the Force. You're bending the dark side to your will to corrupt That is it, to serve your own purpose. Prior to the Clone Wars, the Jedi served the will of the Force. That's what they were. That's what people like Qui Gon Jinn were true Jedi. He was never a gray Jedi. He was never anything like that. He never would use the dark side. That's not what serving the will of the Force is. It's a Jedi who listens to the Force, who lets the Force guide them in their thoughts and their actions. What happened during the Clone Wars was, and even Yoda says this, that the Jedi Order fell to the dark side. They became warriors. They became generals in the Clone Wars. They served as a military arm of the Republic. And this is something that Yoda tells Ezra in the World Between Worlds in Rebels. He tells Ezra that the Jedi fell to the dark side. They became steeped in fear of the Sith and what was going to happen. And so it's really common, though, to see what Coach says here. It's very common to see that they think that it's, removal of the dark side, but that's just an aspect of the Force. It's removal of the Sith. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the complaining about the rise of Skywalker and bringing Palpatine back, because that literally undoes the Chosen One prophecy and everything that Anakin did. I do not like that part of it because Anakin destroyed the Sith, bringing balance to the Force. He didn't remove the dark side. A lot of things I heard was, well, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, there was only 2 Jedi left and 2 Sith. There was Obi-Wan and Yoda, and then there was Sidious and Vader. But that's not it. That's not what that means. That's not what bringing the balance of the Force means. And so at the end of Return of the Jedi, Luke walks into the throne room with 2 Sith. He walks out with 2 Jedi, Anakin and Luke. They destroyed Palpatine. They destroyed the Sith and brought balance to the Force. Unfortunately, Disney doesn't understand this. So what they did was brought Palpatine back in the 3rd movie. And I understand J.J. Abrams was trying to figure out what he could do after the disaster that was The Last Jedi. This was kind of a Hail Mary. It still pisses me off that that's what they did, because bringing back Palpatine, having him never actually die, undoes everything that Anakin was prophesied to do. It removes the prophecy and gives it to Rey. Rey's the one that finally destroys Palpatine. That is something that is unforgivable for me. That's why I don't like the sequel trilogies, is because of this. They did not understand fundamentally how the Force worked. There, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about, this will be my first time showing you guys my face on screen. I got some videos coming out with redoing my entire studio. You're going to see a lot more from me. I got some stuff coming in that I'm going to talk about here. We're going to do a lot more talking head videos. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Again, let me know what you guys think about the Force and balance and what this guy says. Thank you guys so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.